It's night 10, and Natalia arrives to the Gen Z camp where most people are still awake. Everyone then notices her and are stunned to see her, and Natalia says hello. She then admits to them that she was just voted out of her tribe in a fake double tribal council. Bobby says she is so confused right now, and Sam asks Natalia if she's officially part of their tribe now. Natalia says yes. She's now their 11th member. In confessional, Henry says that nobody expected to see a single millennial walk into camp right before going to sleep, but here's Natalia intruding their camp. She also seems very bitter at her tribe, so there will definitely be a lot of stories tonight from her. Natalia then explains that Jed was voted out first tonight and then Justin surprised the rest of them with the double tribal. Lydia then spoke up and basically told everyone to vote her out, so here she is, a unanimously voted out queen. Bobby tells Natalia that they are so glad to have her here since her other tribe didn't accept her anymore as one of their own, and Natalia says she's more than happy to spill everything that went down on that tribe because she's not a millennial anymore. In confessional, Natalia cries to herself and says she feels petrified being this small fish on a tribe full of sharks. To her, this tribe seems way more united than her old tribe, and it scares her because she could be voted out if they go to tribal council. Nobody knows who she is and she doesn't know how she'll even connect with anyone here. It's now day 11, and on the Millennials tribe, all 6 tribe members are hanging out at camp. Andy then comments how he hopes there's a swap today, and Rhea says there's gotta be one since they have gone through 6 eliminations now. In confessional, Rhea says that this tribe suspects a tribe swap is coming, so that actually influenced the decision at the second vote last night to take out Natalia. There's still some awkwardness in the fact that 4 of them voted for Andy in the first vote, but Andy seems like a logical, forgiving player, so she doesn't see him as a concern. Nick then asks the group what happened last night to where Andy got 4 votes, and Lydia explains that Jed wanted to flip on him and Andy because of the idol they were told about. Nick laughs and says he honestly had no idea they knew about the idol, but now it makes sense because Jed did all of that to try taking them out. In confessional, Lydia says she's extremely happy about the results last night because 2 people who were against her got taken out. Jed wanted her gone since day 1 and Natalia wrote her name down for no good reason. Of course, the main focus right now is to convince both sides that she's working with them. Andy and Nick need to know she has their backs, while Rhea, Kendi, and Omar need to believe that Andy and Nick got lucky with their idol play. Right now, the narrative will remain that Jed is the reason this tribe was so divided in the first place, so hopefully that'll keep the suspicion away from herself. Kendi then asks Nick how he knew to play the idol on Andy, and Nick says it should be obvious. It was his intuition. His intuition is almost always right. Everyone else smirks, and Nick says he's joking about that last part. However, he decided to be selfless and use it on Andy, and clearly it worked. In confessional, Nick says that himself and Andy are going to protect Lydia going forward because she is the reason they are both still here. If they throw her under the bus to the others, they'll fully lose Lydia's trust. She's going to be a huge help for their games now as she can communicate with Rhea, Kendi, and Omar and make sure this group of 6 stays as a united front. Lydia and Omar later talk alone, and Omar says he's not buying the whole intuition story from Nick. Lydia then tells him that there's more to that story that he doesn't know about. Basically, when he left their conversation with Nick and Andy, Andy started hinting to her that something was not adding up. This shows her that Andy knew more than he was letting off, so something triggered him to tell Nick to play the idol on him. She's just not sure what exactly set that off. It could have been Jed, or maybe even Natalia when she tried voting her out. In confessional, Lydia says she unfortunately has to lie to Omar's face right now to protect her own game. She still views him as her number 1 out here, but sometimes you need to lie to your number 1. She has to convince him that Andy found out about the vote from Jed or Natalia, which is why Nick was able to correctly play the idol on him. Omar then says he feels like Natalia must have told Andy about the vote since she flipped on the majority, and Lydia says that seems the most plausible. Omar says he can't believe Nick would even take that chance and play it on Andy rather than himself, but Lydia says she's personally not surprised since Nick is Andy's little sheep. He'll do anything for that dude. In confessional, Omar says he feels like despite last night's chaos, it's probably best for this tribe to stick together as a six. While Nick and Andy are definitely 5th and 6th on this tribe, it wouldn't make sense to single them out if there's a swap approaching anyway. Back on the Gen Z tribe, everyone stands in a circle as they play the game Never Have I Ever. In confessional, Caitlin says that ever since gaining Natalia, everyone figured they could play some sort of icebreaker games to get to know her and for her to get to know them all better as well. So, who doesn't like a good little game of Never Have I Ever with a bit of an elimination-style twist? Caitlin then starts off the round and says she never ever passed out drunk in her life. Casey then asks what happens if anyone did, and Caitlin says anyone who did will need to step out of the circle as they are out. Casey then says he's guilty in that case, and then Denisha, Bobby, and Griff also step out. In confessional, Bobby says that it can get wild in her life. When a city girl parties, they party until they can't physically move anymore. Natalia then goes next and says she has never been on a roller coaster before, so everyone except for Henry leaves the circle. Henry admits he never touched one in his life because his parents couldn't afford going to a theme park when he was younger, and Natalia says she's afraid of heights so it never interested her. Christine then tells Henry he could basically eliminate Natalia if he has a strategic statement, but Henry says he'll be fair. He then says he never got into a fist fight before, and Natalia laughs and says that was a terrible one because she's a literal court judge. There's no way she's physically assaulting anyone. In confessional, Natalia says she's definitely happier this morning compared to last night. These people seem very inviting and she would like to believe they truly want to get to know her better. She's probably still an easy vote for these guys, but she'll do her best to bond with them and hopefully get into an alliance or two. Natalia then claims that she never went to Asia before, and Henry says that's not even fair since he's half Filipino, but it's fine. He'll take the loss. Natalia cheers and Christine tells Natalia she shouldn't feel bad since it was Henry's choice to play nice. Caitlin, Christine, and Henry walk together a bit later, discussing their new tribe member Natalia. Henry says he feels like Natalia is pretty cool for the most part, and it's interesting how her old tribe voted her out unanimously. Christine says this could be perfect to keep her for a swap because she will have reasons to target the Millennials and work with Gen Z. In confessional, Caitlin says it's best for her alliance to continue things the way they were and keep Griff as the primary target. Natalia is 100% a better person to keep since her loyalty is up for grabs. Griff is basically just another Natalia which only benefits the Millennials at the moment. Laura and Bobby meanwhile chat, and Laura says she really likes Natalia. Bobby agrees and says nothing has changed in her mind when it comes to who they'd vote out next. Griff then suddenly joins them, and the two go quiet. Griff grins and asks them why they went quiet, and Laura says they were barely paying attention and were shocked to see him join them. In confessional, Griff says it's pretty obvious Laura has it out for him. She's trying to get him voted out over Casey. There's no other reason for her to be chatting it up with almost all of the people who previously voted out Gabe. Griff then tells Laura he knows what she's doing and he doesn't appreciate it. Laura gasps and asks what he means, and Griff says she knows exactly what he means. He then leaves the two without another word, and Laura makes a confused face at Bobby. Bobby then comments how there's a reason they are still voting this dude out. Griff later sits with Denisha at camp, letting her know she can feel safe now since he knows he's going home. Denisha makes a confused face, asking him to elaborate, so he tells her that the people in the majority are voting him out next. He can tell because of Lara's movements lately and her forced confusion when speaking to him. There's no point in even trying to campaign at this point if these people have their minds made up. In confessional, Denisha says that while she feels bad for him in this moment, she knows it's not in her best interest to align herself with Griff. She needs to distance herself from him so that the other people on her tribe prioritize her. Christine and Caitlin chat with Natalia, and in confessional, Caitlin says that most of the alliance is aware by now that they might want to keep Natalia on their side moving forward, so the plan is to create a new fake alliance with Natalia, which includes herself, Natalia, and Christine. It's all about inclusivity, so Natalia will hopefully trust this trio and follow their lead going forward. Caitlin then says she would love to offer an alliance with the three of them together, and Christine says that's awesome. Natalia says this is the first alliance she has been offered over here, so of course she's up for it. Christine then says they could call themselves the MILFs, and Natalia immediately asks her to repeat what she said. Caitlin meanwhile laughs as Christine says MILFs again. Natalia is the MILF, herself and Caitlin are the Zs in Gen Z. Natalia laughs uncontrollably, calling her crazy for that name. Caitlin then says she's personally into it, and Natalia says she's super into it, especially if they are calling her a MILF. In confessional, Natalia says she finally feels involved in the game again. Screw those stupid-ass millennials. They were never fun like this. Who would have thought she was going to be referred to as a MILF out here? That was never on her bucket list. Back on the Millennials tribe, everyone is at camp, sitting around and doing nothing as the day goes on. Nick then comments how it's basically the middle of the day now, which isn't a good sign. Rhea says this feels like a nightmare, and in confessional, Rhea says that this whole tribe was hoping for a swap today, but clearly it's not happening. It would have been great for all of them to move forward as a six, but if they end up losing immunity tomorrow, Nick and Andy are the obvious ones to go home. Nick then tells the group that if they have to compete for immunity tomorrow, they may as well exercise in preparation for it. Everyone then gathers around Nick for an exercise session, and in confessional, Nick says he wants to train everyone physically so they are fully prepared for anything thrown at them tomorrow. It's crucial for them to win immunity so that Gen Z loses another number. It also means he wouldn't have to worry for his own safety on this tribe again. A bit after the workout, Nick and Andy head to the well together, while the other four remain at camp. Rhea then asks if any of them found the new idol, but Omar says he doesn't think anyone even tried to look for it. Rhea then says they need to get on the move then and look for that thing right this instant. Nick and Andy could be searching for it as they speak. In confessional, Omar says that he wants to find this re-hidden Millennials idol not just to keep it out of the hands of Nick and Andy, but also because he needs some individual safety for his own game. An idol would be perfect before a swap because it could save him if he's put on a tribe full of Gen Z. Everyone begins searching for the idol all over the jungle, looking through every bush, tree, and even various dirt piles. All the while, Nick and Andy are at the well talking, not even looking for the idol. Andy eventually notices Kendi walking around, so he points that out to Nick. Nick then says he's probably searching for an idol, so they may as well do the same. They both begin looking through the well, and in confessional, Andy says he actually forgot to look for the re-hidden idol since this whole time. He was under the impression they were going to a tribe swap today. Since that's clearly not happening, they have all the time in the world to look for this re-hidden immunity idol. Rhea and Omar search together, and Omar asks Rhea how she feels about Lydia in their inner knot alliance. Rhea says she feels good with her, and Omar says he does as well. He just doesn't know if maybe she's growing too close to Nick and Andy lately. It's just a small concern he has. In confessional, Omar says he doesn't plan to flip on Lydia anytime soon because she's an important piece to his long-term game. However, he needs to split her up from Nick and Andy so there's no shot of that becoming an alliance of three. Meanwhile, Lydia looks around the jungle by herself, eventually feeling out a package from a dirt pile and yanking it out. In confessional, Lydia says she couldn't be happier right now to find this idol at such a perfect time. This is an important tool for her once the swap comes around because she could see a world where she's placed in the minority of a tribe. Hopefully she doesn't need to reveal this information to anyone because she wants this idol to be hers, and hers only. It's now day 12, and the tribes get to their mats for the next immunity challenge. Justin confirms that Jed and Natalia were both voted out of the last tribal council, but as they can all see, Natalia was actually voted out of her tribe to swap over to Gen Z. Justin then turns to Natalia, asking her how she's doing on her new tribe, and Natalia says she's delighted to be part of this new group of people. She never thought she'd have so much fun over here. Her millennials are missing out. Justin then asks Nick how it feels seeing Natalia still in this game, and Nick shrugs and says that's good for her. Right now, he's not focusing on that. He's focusing on this challenge. Natalia jokes how he's such a tough guy, but Nick remains unfazed. Justin then asks for the immunity statue back from Gen Z, so Bobby brings it over to him. Justin then confirms immunity is up for grabs once again, and in today's challenge, 3 members will be tied to a pole while the other 3 members will take turns going through an obstacle course to reach the tied players. Each of them will untie one of the 3 members and then carry them back to their mat without letting them touch the ground. Once all 3 are transported back to the mat, the 3 who were carried to the mat must then go through the obstacle course themselves and then head to the dig site a little bit past where they were initially tied up. There, they must dig a hole under a beam big enough for all 3 of them to slide underneath and get across. The first tribe with all 3 members at the end of the course will win immunity for their tribe. Losers will go to tribal council tonight and officially voted out the 6th person from this game. Both tribes have now divided themselves into 2 groups of 3, and tied up on the chairs for Gen Z are Caitlin, Griff, and Laura, while the runners are Phil, Bobby, and Henry. On Millennials, the tied-up players are Lydia, Rhea, and Andy, while the runners are Nick, Omar, and Kendi. With that, the challenge begins, so Phil runs first for Gen Z while Nick goes for Millennials. Both guys launch themselves through the holes in the walls, eventually getting to the tied players at the same time. Caitlin then tells Phil to leave her and Laura for Bobby, so Phil begins untying Griff. Nick meanwhile works on untying Lydia for the Millennials. Phil unties Griff first, so he begins carrying him back. Nick then also gets Lydia untied, so he starts carrying her. Both Phil and Nick carefully carry their tribe members through each hole, and Phil eventually gets back with Griff first. Bobby then heads out next for Gen Z, while Nick then gets to his mat with Lydia. Omar then runs to the obstacle course next, eventually catching up to Bobby. Bobby then starts untying Laura while Omar works on Rhea, and then not too long after, Omar successfully unties Rhea and begins carrying her back to the mat. Bobby meanwhile struggles to untie Laura, and Caitlin tells Bobby to take her time with the knots. Omar meanwhile gets closer and closer with Rhea on his shoulders, eventually getting to the mat with her. Kendi then quickly zips through the obstacle course next for Millennials, while Bobby finally unties Laura and begins carrying her. Kendi eventually reaches Andy pretty quickly, so he begins untying him from his chair. Bobby meanwhile continues to carry Laura, taking her time as she hops through each hole with Laura on her shoulder. Kendi then gets Andy out of his chair and begins carrying him back. Bobby meanwhile gets to the final hole, and Laura begs her not to drop her because she feels herself slipping. Kendi meanwhile gets through each hole, but then he drops Andy unexpectedly. Kendi apologizes and Andy says he's fine, so both begin running back to the chair so Kendi can start again. Bobby then gets to the mat with Laura, which allows Henry to head up last for Gen Z. Kendi then tries carrying Andy again, but he drops him right before the first hole. Henry then gets to Caitlin, so Caitlin warns him not to create a knot like Bobby did. Kendi then starts carrying Andy again, though going much slower than before as he tires out. They get to the first hole, and Kendi feels his legs giving up on him. Andy then warns Kendi he's about to fall, so Kendi tries dropping him gently as he tries to regain his energy. Henry meanwhile gets Caitlin out of her chair, so he starts carrying her back. Kendi and Andy start walking back to the chair again, and Andy tells Kendi to wait another minute before trying again since he's going to keep falling otherwise. Henry and Caitlin get through multiple holes in the meantime, eventually reaching the mat. Laura, Griff, and Caitlin begin running through the course themselves as they head over to the second part of the challenge. Kendi then tells Andy he's ready to try again, so he lifts Andy up and tries heading through the obstacles again. Griff, Laura, and Caitlin meanwhile make it to the dig site with ease, so all three begin digging a hole under their beam. Kendi gets halfway through the course with Andy, though his legs begin to tremble. Lydia meanwhile says she has no clue what's going on with those two, and Nick says he feels like they messed up giving Andy to Kendi. All the while, Gen Z continues to dig a hole, making it bigger and bigger as seconds pass. Kendi eventually gets to the final hole, trying to lift his legs but he struggles. Nick tells Kendi to push through the pain, and Kendi groans as he gets himself and Andy through the final hole. He quickly makes it to the mat, allowing Lydia, Rhea, and Andy to head to the dig site for Millennials. Gen Z meanwhile stop digging, and Caitlin tries to fit herself through the hole. However, it's not big enough, so they all start digging again. Lydia and Rhea meanwhile get to the dig site first, while Andy runs a bit behind but eventually makes it as well. Both tribes are now digging under the beam, with Gen Z having a huge lead right now over the Millennials. Griff then tries to fit under the beam, and he successfully gets through to the other side. Caitlin goes next and she too fits through to the other side, leaving just Laura for Gen Z. As Millennials try to pick up the pace, Laura gets through with ease and gets to the other side, meaning Gen Z has won immunity once again, safe from tonight's tribal council. Andy flops onto the ground, breathing in and out heavily, and Lydia and Rhea look down at the ground, devastated over the loss. Nick then covers his face and says this can't be happening, and Omar pats his back to comfort him. Back on the mats, Justin congratulates Gen Z on their 7th challenge win of the season, so Caitlin heads up to grab the statue. Justin then tells the Millennials that they will visit Tribal Council once again, where someone will be the 6th person voted out of Millennials versus Gen Z. Everyone then begins making their way out, and in confessional, Kendi says he takes full responsibility for the loss today. He tried his best to carry Andy through the course, but he ultimately failed time after time. On the bright side, him and his alliance know what to do tonight, and that's to vote out either Nick or Andy. They were always going to be the plan after voting out Jed and Natalia. Back at the Millennials camp, it's very somber and quiet as everyone processes the recent challenge loss. In confessional, Nick says the Tribal Council has this magnetic around it that the Millennials can't seem to stop attracting towards because this is their 5th time visiting that place. Nobody wanted this to happen, especially now knowing that Natalia is probably out to get them all once a swap comes by. Nick then asks Lydia if she wants to go chat, so Lydia follows him out of camp. Nick and Lydia chat as they walk, and Nick asks if there's any plan she came up with for tonight. Lydia says she didn't want it to come to this, but they have to vote for Kendi. He's the least connected within the 6. Nick says he's really good with that. Their best bet is to stay 5 strong after tonight, and if people will be the least upset with Kendi leaving, that's probably the best option for them. In confessional, Lydia says that this is one of her easiest yet hardest days of her game. She knows she's very likely to come out of tonight alive, but she's losing a number no matter what. She knows it has to be Nick or Andy tonight because she has something much stronger with Omar, Rhea, and Kendi. As much as it would have been lovely to have all 6 people here make the swap together, the reality is that they can't. Meanwhile at camp, silence overtakes as everyone minds their own business. In confessional, Andy says it has been extremely awkward ever since the challenge loss because everyone knows they are going to have to turn on each other. To him, the only realistic outcome tonight is that Omar, Rhea, and Kendi are going to stick together and vote out one of him or Nick out tonight. The best thing he can do right now is communicate with Lydia because she seems more connected to those 3 than he is right now. She could be his saving grace. Kendi then asks the group if anyone wants to go for a chat, and Rhea says she'll go with him. The 2 then leave camp, and Andy goes up to Omar and asks him if he has any ideas for tonight's vote. Omar says he doesn't have a name and would rather not come up with one. He'd rather someone else say a name. Andy then asks him if he'd be willing to vote for either Kendi or Rhea in that case, and Omar says he'll need to check in with Lydia first because her vote is very crucial for tonight. In confessional, Omar says he doesn't want to keep both Nick and Andy over Kendi and Rhea. That would be horrible for his game after all this time spent bonding with them. Nick and Andy are much more expendable and could very well flip on him in a swap. Rhea and Kendi meanwhile chat, and Kendi says he wants to vote Nick out tonight over Andy. He let Omar and Lydia get their way during the Renee vote, so now it's his chance to get his own way by getting Nick out. Rhea tells Kendi that he already knows she's happy voting Nick out tonight. Plus, Andy is more communicative and easygoing, which are great attributes to have as an alliance member. In confessional, Rhea says that she has a special bond with Kendi that she doesn't feel with her inner not alliance with Lydia and Omar. Her and Kendi get along great out here and she sees herself going all the way with him. They have similar mindsets in this game, and right now they are both on a mission to finally take out Nick after all this time. Rhea then tells Kendi that no matter what, she's not backing down to this Nick vote, even if Lydia or Omar try switching it to Andy. Kendi says he feels the exact same, and he'll feel more sketched out if either of those two try to switch things around. Omar and Lydia chat a bit later, and Omar asks Lydia how her talk with Nick went. Lydia says she can sense how much he's relying on her tonight. He knows he doesn't have as much power anymore, especially without that idol. Omar then tells Lydia he just wants her to know that they have to cut Nick or Andy tonight. There's no good reason to turn on Rhea and Kendi right now. Lydia says without a doubt she's going to vote out Nick or Andy tonight. In fact, they don't even need to perform a split vote because she has the re-hidden idol from this camp. Omar smiles and calls that exciting, and Lydia says she's only telling him and Rhea since they deserve to know as the inner knot. In confessional, Omar says it's great to hear how comfortable Lydia is sharing that she has the new Millennials idol. It's showing him that she does in fact see him as her number one over anyone else here, and it makes him feel a lot better voting out Nick or Andy tonight. There really shouldn't be any complications to this vote. Nick and Andy talk in the meantime, and Nick fills Andy in that he and Lydia agreed to vote for Kendi tonight. In fact, she came up with the plan herself, so it's pretty believable to him. Andy nods and says he's good with that, but he doesn't know if Omar will go along with it. Nick then says they'll still have chats with Omar, but Lydia will be the main one that'll get Omar to swing to their side. In confessional, Andy says he doesn't think there's a chance for him and Nick to both stay after tonight. While Nick thinks they have the votes to take out Kendi, the reality is that it's looking like Kendi, Rhea, Omar, and probably even Lydia are going to stick together. That's how it has always been from the start. That only really means one thing for him tonight. He might have to campaign against Nick. Kendi, Rhea, and Lydia chat, and Kendi asks Lydia how her chat with Nick went earlier. Lydia says she had to lie to his face because he thought they were voting together. He told her he wanted Kendi out because he'd be a quote-unquote weaker ally in the swap. Kendi smirks and says he figured since neither of them ever bonded closely. At least they have the opportunity to vote him out now. Rhea says she too would feel better voting out Nick over Andy since he's harder to get along with, and Lydia says she understands. She's totally fine voting out Nick tonight. Lydia later chats with Andy, and in confessional, Lydia says that it's probably in her best interest to warn Andy ahead of time that they don't have the votes to keep Nick tonight. Andy seems like a logical player, so if anything, he might appreciate the heads up. Plus, if Andy gets blindsided tonight, he has every reason to leak her whole scheme to vote out Jed, which could completely ruin the relationship she built with everyone else. Lydia then sighs and tells Andy that it's not looking good for Nick tonight. She doesn't know what they can do at this point to even try to keep him, so it's probably best to let go of him tonight. Andy nods and says he figured. He prepared for this possible outcome. The vibe has been off with Rhea, Kendi, and Omar, so he saw this coming. Lydia then says she doesn't want to leave him out of this because she does see him as an ally, so he deserves to know the truth. The only problem now is that the other three will get suspicious if he suddenly votes for Nick with them. Either he votes with Nick to blend in or votes for Nick, which could raise a few eyebrows. Andy then says he'd much rather go talk to the others and let them know he's willing to vote for Nick tonight. They'll understand his vote better in that case. In confessional, Andy says he saw this day coming unfortunately. He knew Nick would have to go home because he has been a tough personality for many people out here. Even though Nick has been a great ally for his game, that greatness has expired. Andy then tells Lydia he's going to talk to Rhea and Kendi before tribal council about his vote for Nick, and Lydia says she'll fill in Omar. It's night 12, and the Millennials arrive at tribal council and sit in their seats. Justin welcomes them back, claiming that he's not surprised anymore that he's seeing them round after round. He turns to Andy first, asking him how these repetitive losses affect everyone's individual games at this point, and Andy says it's not great that they keep losing their own millennial numbers. Even with Natalia now swapped over to the other tribe, it's just getting worse and worse for them. Kendi agrees and says that Gen Z is probably tighter than ever, which just makes all of their lives a lot harder. Justin then asks Nick how this tribe can ensure they can make it to merge down the road if they are always losing their members, and Nick says that the smartest thing to do right now is move forward as a collective 5. This has been the main discussion last tribal council and the one before. It was always about being a collective 7 until Jed decided to flip on this whole group. However, his own actions have proven that he's willing to move forward with these people. Justin then asks Nick if he feels like his actions last tribal council mean anything to everyone else, and Nick says that's up to them to decide. He hopes they see value in him as an alliance member. He has proven his loyalty before. Justin turns to Lydia, stating that she almost got voted out last time. He wonders if she's thinking about the last tribal as part of her decision tonight, and Lydia says she is considering a lot of things. It's not just tribal council she's considering, but also the relationships she has built over time. Like Nick said, she wants this tribe to be as solid as possible going into a swap, and they have to prepare for it every single round at this point. It could happen tomorrow, or even 3 days from now. They can never know. Justin then asks Kendi if it's clear how this vote will result tonight, and Kendi says he doesn't know for certain. He had his chats with people today and he's hoping he hasn't been lied to. Justin then asks Andy if he perhaps knows how this vote will go, and Andy says he's preparing for the worst just in case it happens. For all he knows, he could be the one going home tonight. Justin then asks Omar if he too worries he could go home, and Omar says he surprisingly feels safe tonight. He heard 2 different names, so he feels like he's one of the deciding votes tonight. That doesn't mean he's swaying from side to side. He already knows where he's going. Justin then asks Lydia if there's anything this tribe should know ahead of this vote, and Lydia says she just wants them all to stick together in the swap, no matter the outcome. It's in all of their best interest to squash any personal matters they have with each other and just look at the facts. There are 11 people on that other tribe that will dominate this game if nobody does anything about it. Justin then tells everyone that this might be a good time to get to the vote then, so everyone starts to prepare.
I'll tally the votes. If anyone has a hidden immunity idol and they want to play it, now would be the time to do so. Alright, I'll read the votes. First vote. Kendi. Nick. That's 1 vote Kendi, 1 vote Nick. Nick. 2 votes Nick, 1 vote Kendi. Nick. That's 3 votes Nick, 1 vote Kendi. Sixth person voted out of Survivor Millennials vs Gen Z. Nick.
Nick smiles and sighs out loud, while Andy gets up to give him a hug, letting him know this wasn't an easy decision. Nick then tells everyone he doesn't have any hard feelings because he knew this would happen to him eventually. Omar tells Nick he played a great game, and then Nick puts his torch down and tells them all to please take down the enemy for him. Justin then snuffs Nick's torch, so Nick begins making his way out. Justin then faces the rest and tells them to start making their way back to camp, so they all start heading out. Next time on Millennials vs Gen Z, after 13 days, Millennials and Gen Z are officially entering a tribe swap. However, the war between these two generations doesn't end here, as tribal lines are tested and a battle for power continues. Who will come out on top and who will be in danger of going home next? Will Millennials lose yet another member? Find all of this out in the next episode. Nick's final thoughts. Nick feels like the tribe voted him out tonight because he was going to become a massive threat eventually. They all knew the swap was likely coming next round, so they didn't need his muscle anymore. That being said, he takes it as a compliment and he truly hopes these 5 can make it out alive, even if Kendi ends up as the one winning this whole thing. It was really fun being able to push himself beyond limits he ever knew existed, and he'd do it all again in a heartbeat.